I never thought I'd be the guy writing something like this, but here we are. My name's Jake, and I've been with my wife, Amanda, for about 8 years now. We met in college, had our fair share of ups and downs, but I really thought we'd built a life together. She's always been a bit of a bitch, sharp-tongued, quick to dismiss anyone she didn't like, and she's got this knack for making everything about her. Still, I loved her. Or at least I thought I did. Things started feeling off about 6 months ago. At first, I just chalked it up to stress. I was busy with work trying to get a promotion, dealing with a lot of deadlines, and Amanda seemed restless. She was more bitchy than usual, snapping at me over little things, canceling plans last minute, and I noticed she was spending a lot more time on her phone. She'd hide her screen when I came near, which wasn't like her. No big deal, I figured. People get busy, people get distracted, right? But then I started catching little things. She'd leave her phone around more often. I'd see messages from some guy named Ryan appear on her screen, and she'd quickly swipe away, her face flushing. I remember one time walking into the bedroom and seeing her texting in bed late at night. I didn't say anything at first, just watched her for a bit. The way she'd smile at her phone, her eyes darting nervously, something was definitely up. It was during one of those nights. I was lying next to her, trying to fall asleep, when I noticed her phone buzz. She was already pretending to be asleep, but I reached over and grabbed it. I saw the notification. "Can't wait to see you tonight, love you." My stomach sank. I looked at her and she didn't wake up. I opened the message and saw a string of texts from Ryan talking about how much she missed him, how she couldn't wait to be with him again. That was it. It hit me like a ton of bricks. My wife, the woman I trusted, was cheating on me, with my best friend no less. My mind spun. I felt this rage and heartbreak all at once. How could she do this? How could she betray me, our marriage, and for what? A guy who's been around forever. I didn't even know what to do with that initial shock. I just sat there staring at her, realizing that everything I believed about us was crumbling. I kept that secret inside for a while, trying to process it, but the guilt of not confronting her yet ate me up. I wanted to believe it was a mistake, maybe a misunderstanding, but I knew deep down. Those texts, the way she'd been acting, her secretive behavior, this was no accident. It was real. She was cheating, and I was just too blind to see it until I stumbled onto the proof myself. The next few days were a nightmare. I couldn't concentrate at work, couldn't sleep, and every time I looked at Amanda, I saw this stranger who had taken my wife's face. She kept acting like everything was normal, smiling, joking, pretending she had no idea I knew. But I saw the flicker of guilt in her eyes when she thought I wasn't looking. She was a terrible liar, but she was good at hiding it behind her bitchy veneer. I didn't confront her right away. I needed to think, to plan what I'd say. But I knew that if I said anything now, I'd just blow up and say things I might regret. Instead, I started digging. I went through her phone again, her email, her social media accounts. I found more signs, messages from Ryan that had been deleted, but I managed to screenshot them before she could wipe them out. She'd been seeing him for months, probably longer than I thought. And from the way she acted, I could tell she was used to lying, getting away with things. She'd lie about where she was, who she was with, what she was doing. One night I decided enough was enough. I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. I waited until she was in the shower, then I grabbed her phone again. I needed to see if she'd left any clues, any trace of her lies. That's when I noticed her WhatsApp was still logged in on my tablet. I unlocked it, and there were messages from Ryan again, explicit, needy, saying he couldn't wait to see her tonight, just like I'd seen on her phone. My blood ran cold. That was the moment I knew I couldn't stay silent. I couldn't just silently suffer this betrayal while she went on pretending. I decided I'd confront her the next day, but I wanted to do it on my terms with some leverage. I started making plans, gathering evidence, thinking about how I'd shock her, force her to face what she'd done. I also knew I had to prepare for the worst. Amanda has always been a manipulative bitch. She's lied her way out of everything before. So I kept my cool, stayed calm. I even considered setting a trap, showing up unexpectedly when I knew she'd be with Ryan. I wanted her to finally see I wasn't some clueless idiot she could keep fooling. The pain of that realization, that she'd been cheating with my best friend during a time of grief no less, was a heavy weight I carried every single day. I kept telling myself I deserved the truth, no matter how much it hurt. The day I finally decided to confront her, I was a mess. My stomach was tied in knots, but I knew I couldn't keep living in this limbo. I'd planned everything out, caught her, maybe recorded something, made her see I was serious. I told her I needed to talk, and she rolled her eyes. Like I was bothering her, that typical bitchy smirk on her face. She always thought she was smarter than everyone else, that she could lie her way out of anything. I sat her down in the living room, calmly but with a voice that betrayed my anger. I threw the screenshots in front of her, the messages from Ryan, the times she'd been sneaking around. Her face changed in a split second. Her eyes widened, but the smirk remained, like she was amused by how easy she thought it was to get away with it. She looked at me with this dismissive attitude and started her usual bullshit about how I was paranoid, how I was overreacting, that Ryan was just a friend, that she wasn't even cheating, just exchanging some harmless texts. I almost lost it. I told her I wasn't stupid, that I'd seen enough, that I knew she'd been lying for months. Her excuse, that she was bored, that Ryan gave her attention and she was just having fun. She said I was being insecure, that I was imagining things. She kept twisting the story, lying through her teeth, trying to turn it around and make me feel guilty for catching her. She even had the nerve to say she loved me, that it was just sex, no big deal, that I should be happy she was still with me. That's when the anger hit me hard. I felt like I was drowning in betrayal. How could she be so callous, so selfish? During my brother's funeral, no less, she was out cheating on me, lying about the whole thing. That day when I was grieving, she was probably with Ryan, doing God knows what. I couldn't believe I married someone like that. The woman who was supposed to be my partner, my confidant, turned out to be the one destroying everything we built. I asked her straight up, "Are you serious? You're cheating on me with Ryan, right under my nose, and you have the nerve to sit here and lie?" She just smirked again, shrugging like it didn't matter. I saw the contempt in her eyes, the way she looked at me like I was an obstacle to her happiness. That moment, I realized I was wasting my life with a woman who didn't care about me. That was the last straw. I told her I'd had enough, that I was done with her lies, and I left the room. I needed to process this, to figure out what I was going to do next. But deep down, I knew everything had changed forever. That night, I didn't sleep. I kept replaying everything in my head, her words, her smirk, the way she lied so effortlessly. I felt betrayed on every level. How could she do this during such a vulnerable time? My brother's funeral was just a week ago, and she was out with Ryan all that time, probably laughing behind my back. The pain was unbearable. I had always thought Amanda was selfish, but this was beyond anything I'd ever imagined. It was like she had no conscience, no shame. The next morning, I woke up angry but also oddly numb. I knew I had to make a decision. I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. I decided to look into everything again, call it my one last shot at clarity. I found out Ryan had visited her house more times than I could count, sometimes late into the night. I even discovered she bought him gifts, tiny things that meant nothing to her but told me everything. She was completely entwined with him, and I'd been blind to it. I also found out some shocking details that made my stomach churn. Apparently, she'd been lying about where she was, saying she was working late or out with friends. Instead, she was with Ryan. Her bitchy attitude, her constant dismissiveness, all of it made sense now. She'd been playing me for a fool, and I felt so stupid for not seeing it earlier. Then came the worst part, her calling me that morning, trying to act innocent like she hadn't done anything wrong. She claimed she was confused, that she didn't mean to hurt me, that Ryan was just a mistake. She kept crying, trying to manipulate me with tears and her fake sob story. She said she loved me, that she'd never cheat if I just forgave her, but I could hear the lie in her voice. I knew better. There was no way she was going to stop, not after so long, not after all the lies she told herself. I felt this swell of rage, but also this crushing sadness. I was losing her, losing what I thought was my life, all because she was a selfish, lying bitch who couldn't keep her legs closed. I told her I needed space, that I needed to think, and I hung up. I knew I had to decide whether to salvage what was left or cut her out completely. But I also felt something else, this overwhelming desire for revenge, not in a petty way, but just enough to make her realize she'd messed with the wrong guy. I wasn't going to let her walk all over me. Not anymore. The days that followed were some of the darkest I've ever experienced. I threw myself into figuring out my next move, trying to keep my head clear amidst the storm of emotions. I kept digging, gathering more evidence and planning my response. I wanted her to understand the full extent of what she'd done, how she'd shattered everything for a fleeting moment of fun, as she kept calling it. I also started to notice how she was acting differently around her friends and family. She was more bitchy than ever, dismissive, like she was trying to cover her tracks. She'd make snide comments about me, about how I was too controlling or paranoid. That's classic Amanda, she always thought she could lie her way out of anything, making herself the victim. But I saw through it all. I knew her game now and I was done playing along. One evening I decided I'd had enough. I set a trap. I told her I was going out for a few hours to meet some friends, but I really went to a nearby coffee shop and waited. I knew she'd come home early, probably to see if I was gone. Sure enough, I saw her pull up, her usual bitchy smirk plastered on her face. But instead of going to bed, she went into the bedroom and I followed at a distance. I saw her sneak her phone out of her purse and start texting Ryan again. That was the moment I snapped. I stepped out of the shadows and confronted her right then and there. I told her I knew everything, how she'd been lying, cheating, sneaking around. Her reaction, a loud, dismissive laugh. She called me paranoid, said I was delusional, and that I was overreacting. She told me Ryan was just a friend, that I was jealous, insecure, and that I'd ruin everything if I didn't get over myself. That's when I lost it. I told her I wasn't going to be the fool anymore. I pulled out the evidence, screenshots, call logs, gifts she'd bought him. I told her she was a selfish bitch, that she had no loyalty, no respect. I told her I was done tolerating her lies, her manipulations, her cheating. I said I was going to leave her if she didn't face the truth, and her face twisted like she was about to have a meltdown. But I didn't care anymore. I just knew I had to stand my ground. At that moment, her bitchy mask cracked and she looked genuinely terrified for the first time, because she knew I wasn't going to just forgive her or pretend it didn't happen. I made it clear I was done playing her game. That night, I packed a bag and left. I didn't tell her where I was going. I just knew I had to get out of there and start healing from the worst betrayal of my life. The silence that followed was deafening. I moved out, stayed with a friend for a few days while I figured everything out. Walking away from Amanda was the hardest thing I'd ever done, but I knew I couldn't stay with someone who lied, cheated, and treated me like I was nothing. It was a brutal wake-up call, but it also forced me to reflect. I realized how much I'd ignored, how I convinced myself that her bitchy attitude was just her way, how I overlooked the signs because I loved her. In the end, I learned a lot. I learned that betrayal cuts deep and trust is fragile. I learned that no matter how much you want to believe in someone, sometimes they're just not worth it. And I realized that revenge, in my case, wasn't about petty payback but about reclaiming my dignity. Making her see that I wasn't some fool she could manipulate anymore, showing her I was done with her lies and her games. I've been healing since then. It's been a rough road, but I'm finally starting to feel normal again. I don't see Amanda anymore, and I don't plan to. I've cut her out of my life completely. What she did taught me to trust my instincts and never ignore the warning signs. That sometimes love isn't enough and you have to prioritize your own well-being. To anyone reading this, if you're in a similar situation, know that you're not alone. And you deserve more than someone who lies, cheats, and manipulates. Stand up for yourself, hold your ground, and don't be afraid to walk away. Because at the end of the day, the only person who truly matters in your life is you. And you shouldn't settle for anything less than honesty, loyalty, and respect.